Welcome to the Tradie Wife Life podcast, brought to you by Tradies in Business, where we talk to tradie wives about their goals, their challenges, their hopes and dreams, and how their trade business can help with that. Welcome back, listeners, to Tradie Wife Life. I have another fabulous guest. I know you're all hanging out for me to do a solo episode. Not really. So I have gone high and wide looking for fantastic guests to join us on the show. And this one came recommended from one of our wonderful clients who did join me on the show recently as well, Lara Deans. And Lara works with our guest, Katrina. They work together. Katrina is her bookkeeper. And then I got confused about how to actually introduce Katrina because she does so much more than that. So I'm going to hand over to Katrina Spinazzola. Have I said that right? Please tell me I got it right.
Well done. Well done.
Pressure's off now. Who is actually going to introduce herself and explain how much more she does than bookkeeping in her current business. Hello, Katrina.
Hi, no pressure really. Bookkeeper is probably a good entry point, but what people think we do is probably a little bit different these days. We do look at numbers, but certainly a lot of payroll work and a lot of compliance. And when I say compliance, things like, how do I know the numbers are in the right boxes? Why are they adding up correctly? You know, before I get it to my accountant, can I be sure that I've lodged everything correctly? So there's a whole pile of things that come out of that. There can be in the tradie world, all those other compliance things like Co-Invest and Incolink as well. But we tend to sort of sit there as accounting technicians, I think is a good word of where we sit.
Oh, I love that. Why hasn't somebody else coined that before?
Well, in Canada, that's what we would be. So bookkeeper is a very Australian sort of word.
Yes.
And I think we are technically we're BAS agents, but some clients don't do a BAS. So I think accounting technician, and certainly the accountants push back to us for that software. Hey, what has the client done here? Can you help us fix it kind of stage? So yeah, that's what we do.
Oh, I love it. That's a great explanation. Now, your business name is KRS Consulting Group. So we're going to put that out there straight at the very beginning because people tend to then jump on the phone and be searching away. And that's how I came to be talking to you today. But most importantly, I think to your journey is how you came to be part of what you do. And that's because you started out as a training wife. Well, no, you were doing stuff well before that.
Yeah.
It was sort of that first stepping point in your journey. Do you want to lead us through what that looked like for you?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a very similar story, I think, I gather from what a lot of your listeners. So I was at university studying a business degree, but I was doing two streams that I got to the end and went, I really don't want to work in unions and I really don't want to work in HR. It just wasn't me. I mean, I like people, but I didn't like them that much. And the numbers thing really made sense. 1 and 1 equals 2 doesn't equal 2.5. So I kind of like that. But then I met and married a tradie and had kids and kind of looked for something to work from home, which seems ridiculous now because so much is flexible and remote, but back then wasn't possible, and fell into kind of being pushed by my accountant who got me to do my husband's books and said, well, I've got a background in it. So it made the next steps quite a lot easier because there are some compliance and some education and some things we have to tick off to be licensed to do this for clients, but certainly I could do his books. And that just was a great sounding board to then grow and grow and grow to, 1 client, 5 clients, to many clients, many different clients. Yeah.
It's a fascinating thing. A common theme to most of our episodes is how we kind of fall into the role of tradie wife and what that means in terms of business and then the progression. It's not like, I didn't dream of being a builder's wife when I was growing up. In fact, it never even crossed my mind that I might be doing the kind of things I used to do with him and his business. So it never appeared as a career to me, and yet it becomes a fantastic career for so many women. And then I find lots like yourself that go on to create their own businesses through what they have learned or experienced within working with their tradie. Can you tell me about those early days in that journey? Was it a really natural fit for you and your husband, or was there, like so many of us, some friction and it was a bit hard to step your way through creating the boundaries that come with running a business together?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, especially because you're working from home and you've got kid pressure. But I think too, we're both very vocal and outspoken and we will thrash out the arguments to this day. But I think there's this nice respect of, I know he knows the technical building side, he knows I know the numbers side, but he takes a keen interest in it, which is helpful. But I deal with a lot of tradies' wives where I'm quite a little bit proud when they really get it and are doing it well, and they can actually help their tradie husbands.
Yep.
And I see that pushed down the line because my experience is my husband also had done some study in sort of business. So he had a bit of a background, bit of a flair for the numbers, but was happy to go and do the building side of it. But yeah, I guess it's an evolution. Everybody's got a different interest level, and that's where we sometimes slide in with, you've got it to this point now, you want us to support you from that point onwards. And some people I just do training only. It's just set up and training. So it's basically so they can then have that confidence and off they go.
That's a fascinating part of your business. I didn't know that you actually did, Katrina. So we have, and generally I find that most tradie wives start off in this journey helping out with the books. You know, I'll do the data entry, or I'll get it to the point that we hand off to a bookkeeper or an accountant so they can do their bit. It's not, for many of us, our favorite thing to do. I will hold my hand very high and say, I haven't touched our bookwork for years. I have other people do that for me because I don't enjoy it. It's not something that I love. And it's not my skill set, if I'm really honest. It's not where I excel. So I don't like to do it. And yet that is exactly where I started. I started out doing the data entry, and just about every client that we have, or the ladies that we talk to over time, started in the same position, start with the data entry, because it feels like it's the paperwork, if you like. And it feels like the most natural place where I can slot in and help out in the business to relieve some of the pressures so that the tradie can get back onto the tools and do what they do best. However, it's this precarious position where it's often not our strength and we don't really know what we're doing. So we mumble our way through. And invariably, some of those people find themselves in a position where they're paying a lot more to their accountant because things haven't been coded correctly, or it's not set up, or we don't really know what we're doing. So we just make a bit of a hash job of it. At what point do you think it's important to make the distinction between, okay, I'm going to do some training and understand how to do this correctly, or I'm actually going to outsource it all and give it to somebody like you or your company to take care of for me?
So often when I get someone come to me, whether it be the tradie or the wife, saying, I want to outsource this, I actually say, well, let's figure out if that's the right decision, because sometimes it isn't. And I'm a very big believer that having someone who's got their eyes on the numbers, that's internal, that's emotionally attached, because I can be quite unemotional about it. Their numbers, it's not my livelihood. Yes, I care, but at the end of the day, you know, it's your business. So having someone at the source is actually helpful. They also usually know the tradie and his personality and can probably put forward what we need to have happening. So it's a matter of, okay, so why do you want to outsource it? I don't like doing it. Okay, well, that's one good reason. But often it's just this doubted skill. And the way I teach them is, a lot of it is usually quite repetitive. We're lucky in these industries. We don't have a lot of things that are ever changing. It's quite predictable. So you're able to say, okay, let's do these things. And then if something out of the ordinary happens, that's where we step in as that support. So most of our clients stay on for that quarterly check-in. But say someone like Lara, she's a good example. And we're friends, but she'll come to me annually and just go, hey, can we just, I've got some, 10 questions I want to ask, or can you double check the work cover, or just those things that you don't do very often, but she'll generally manage everything else herself. I think it's, what I really like is giving people that way of, you don't have to like it, but at least if you understand it, they don't mind doing it. I mean, we all do get stuck doing the parts we don't want to do, but generally most people won't outsource all of it. They'll at least do their own invoicing, or they'll have some touch point on it. But there are some tradies that don't have the tradie wife. So we become the quasi wife, or we become the wife they can argue with because they don't want to argue with their real wife. So that does happen. And I'm good in an argument. But generally I love seeing that growth journey. It's great.
That's fantastic. I at what point though do you understand that, okay, my strengths and my skills aren't firm in this area? So I guess one of the biggest fears is then, well, how do I hand it off? I can remember even when I jumped in and did the things I did, everything was coming through that particular office. Being a building company, everything came to the one email address. All the receipts were delivered to the one in tray. It made it quite easy to jump in and do it. They were the manual days before we had these fancy scanning softwares that we can send our receipts to. So, sometimes it's just in the handing off of the task that prevents it from being done, which means somebody's not being freed up, or they're stuck being saddled with something they really don't enjoy. How do you create that transition for someone so that they're able to step aside and allow the support services that are available for all of us through software and people like yourself to help take over and manage that for you?
is a little easier than what you think, because it comes down to deadlines and it comes down to particular tasks and jobs. So it's called payroll has to be done weekly. Okay, so is that something you're going to do or want to do, or is it something you need us to do? And it might be, say, tradie wives having a baby. I'm just not going to be available to do that. I'm not predictably going to be available on a Tuesday morning by 12 o'clock to get these guys their wages. So we break it down into different tasks, like all those compliance things, the BAS. Will you be able to do the data entry, but you just want us to do the review and reconcile and those lovely do the numbers add up kind of things? And you know what level of involvement you want. And sometimes I'll get the tradie come in and say, I want my wife to do my books, but she's not there. And I'm like, this is not going to work. So, or sometimes he'll say to me, this is a really common one. He'll say, I want my wife to do my books. And I go, yeah, but does she want to? Like, because if she doesn't want to, this is never, sorry, we need to break up right now because it's never going to work. If she wants to be taking the kids to school and, you know, being able to stay back and watch their morning assembly rather than rushing off to do your books, well, then hang on, let's quote this. I mean, to me, if you're not going to get someone doing it internally, there's a cost saving. So you do need to quantify paying to have someone to do it. Whereas I do think that hybrid approach of doing the things that you can manage, you're at the source, you can save the money, you can have control, he can feel like you're a part of his business is really important. And just to give it all away isn't always the answer, as I said before, but there are some people that we do have to call it, this is not their strength. And if anything, they're going to cost themselves more money in fix-ups. And we don't want that either. And that's a hard conversation to have, and I've not had to have it very often, because I think if you divide the jobs and the deadlines and what people's capacity is, people are pretty realistic these days on what they're willing to do. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about that emotional attachment. I think it's a really good point to raise. I've seen some big mistakes in business where business owners take their eye off the prize. So they've outsourced all of their bookkeeping, their accounting, the whole lot. They're just sitting down having perhaps an annual meeting with their accountant who tells them this is what the tax story looks like. But they've taken their eye off the prize and they really don't know what's going on in terms of what their cash flow looks like and what where is that money actually going? You know, the accountant's telling me I've made a profit, but I can't see it. Are there particular reports that you're a big advocate for, Katrina, or some benchmarks perhaps that we should be working towards with reporting to ensure that as a business owner, we're getting the information that we require?
Yeah, look, it's a little bit like dental hygiene. Nobody really says, oh, I'm rip roaring ready to go to the dentist. I really want to do that. And, you know, I've got to brush my teeth and floss. And it's the same sort of thing. We kind of say, if your data's good, right, if we can get you into a good routine that your data's fairly consistent, and I always say bookkeeping's all about consistency. If you put it in one place, always put it in that place. Equally makes it easy for us to find it if you've got it in the wrong place because you consistently put it in the wrong place. But you sort of sit there and you go, you know, if you've got the data that's great, you should jump in and you should sit down at a point in time. Now this, you know, I get it. Not everybody's passionate about numbers and it bores them to tears. But you go, look, once a month or once a quarter at the very minimum, you should be able to feel happy enough to run some reports, profit and loss, maybe a balance sheet, and at least understand them a bit of, right, did we make money and where did it go? They're two big questions you want to be able to answer. Did we make any money and where did it go? But that's sort of looking in the rearview mirror. You also need to be able to, and the software does this quite well, look at it and go, what's coming up? What money are we owed? What's going to come in? Just simple questions. But I think when people often go and see a financial person, they start talking in jargon. We do it all the time. We talk in jargon and we start talking at you and you can see the person's face just fade away, like they're just going, yeah, I have no idea. You've mentioned the word liability a few too many times. You know, you've maybe said compliance and deadline and audit and all the scary stuff. But I think for me, I have a package of little reports I do myself. I grab a coffee, I sit down, I go, I'm just going to look for some trends. What went up, what went down? I mean, a lot of what we do, if you know the numbers, isn't very difficult if you know which things to look at.
Yes.
So we kind of encourage people before they even get to the accountant to have already sort of looked at analysing that. And I've seen that, bringing back to Lara, I've seen her do that. She's been able to sort of do analysis, for want of a better word, of her own business and go, yeah, but that's explainable by this, because she knows the jobs and she knows how things have sort of been going, what the problems or wins are. And this is where business coaches can be great if you're having those sort of conversations. I think what people find hard is that guiding. What do I look at? What do I run? But I do think that just getting the data isn't good enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally agree. You've brought up a fantastic point that I had made a note I wanted to talk about. I was going to be really cheeky and say, do bookkeepers talk like accountants? Because I find accountants can be really confusing to most of our clients. And I can already tell that you can naturally differentiate between the two different types of jargon, because it is a jargon, and it's no different than a tradie talking in their tradie jargon. They have their own language. They talk a specific way about what is important in their tradie world. However, clients often, it just flies over. They don't understand what a grease nipple is, or they don't understand, I don't know, I could think 400 other tradie terms. And a client doesn't understand them because that's not their real world experience. I see the same kind of trends when it comes to understanding your numbers, to knowing what you need to be looking at. The second we say cash flow forecast, everybody glazes over and nobody wants to talk about it because it feels too hard. And most of the too hard is the not understanding of what we're talking about, because we've flipped back to jargon. So I wanted to know if that was something that you had consciously worked to keep a barrier between the two so that you can relate to clients so they understand what you're talking about, or if it is something that's just evolved through your business journey.
I think I've sort of realized that we do revert to that. We're even guilty of it. I suppose from an accountant's perspective, they do have some more complex things that they cannot, or it's just not worthy of explaining. But I always try to bring it to the trade. So if I was talking to a plumber, I would say, and they say, can you just lodge my BAS? I don't want you to check it, just lodge it. I'll go, okay, I'm going to dig a trench because I can do that. I'm going to put a bit of gravel in it, and I'm going to throw down a pipe. I don't know if it's stormwater or sewer. I don't really much care. Just going to get myself a length of pipe and chuck it in there. But actually, worse than that, I'm going to actually cover it over. Then I want you to give me a certificate. And they go, but I haven't seen it. I go, exactly. You don't show me your numbers, I can't say that they're right.
Yep.
So I'm running reports that I can't tell you if they're correct. But I think that's that thing of it is a bit of a skill trying to pick up people's level of knowledge and interest, and making sure you're making it not too simple.
Yep.
Because these things can be complex, and it's where you defer to the accountant, because they'll start asking you rules about, okay, so I get we've made a profit. How are we going to pay tax on that? And you go, okay, so this is what we need to do now. You need to book an appointment with your accountant for a tax meeting. Oh, do I do that now? No, you do that in May. Let's schedule it. Or don't go to them and not show them any figures. They're figures people. Don't go there and say, I want to have a meeting, but not bring them numbers. That's right. The numbers you want them to look at. So yeah, it is a bit of a skill. I think over years I've kind of tried to learn people, and, you know, no question, it sounds really basic, but no question is dumb.
Yes.
Because it gives you an insight into how people think. And sometimes when they ask you a question, you think, I've never actually even thought of it that way, but I can see why you think that. But I think groups like the Tradie Wives is good for people learning off each other.
Yep.
But the thing is, we as professionals might sit in the back end of some of those groups and we see the conversation going in the wrong direction. Like we see the advice going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for us, because you don't want to sound like you're selling to people, but you do want to help them. You do want to say, oh, okay, maybe I wouldn't do that.
Yes.
So it is hard from a professional perspective, and you don't know their figures. You don't have them in a professional capacity. So yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, it is a bit of a skill. It's a bit of a skill.
Now, Katrina, do you work Australia-wide? And if so, is compliance, so you were talking about compliance earlier, is it different in each state?
Yes, it is. So we're not restricted to working in Victoria. We do have clients interstate. There's particular rules, mainly the payroll rules, payroll tax and work cover and those sort of things can vary state to state. Some of the awards, once you get into payroll, you've got some long service leave and things like that vary state to state. We do tend to attract people in Victoria. People still usually like to believe if they did want to meet you, they could. I certainly have had clients I've never met and clients interstate.
Yes.
But there's plenty of, this is the thing, right? When you hook into a network like the sorts of people, there's lots of people that do what I do, and you find that right group, there's plenty of options. And it's the same with accountants. There's plenty of options. If people say, I don't think my accountants, I don't think we have the right fit, you kind of ask them why. What are they charging you? What are you asking them for? Oh, you're only asking them to do your tax. You're not asking them to do any forward planning. So hang on, maybe we just got to ask them.
That's right.
And sometimes the accountants will have the same. They'll have clients from interstate where they've just found the right fit. And with remote work and Zoom meetings, all that stuff's so much easier. But yeah, I do think that it is important just to have the right fit.
Yep, I totally agree. The landscape has certainly changed, which means that we can work anywhere within the country. And I think that's great for them being able to find that right fit. I think we were quite restricted by geography previously. And it's meant that we didn't always get the right outcome. But you've raised a fantastic point, and that is about accountants. We hear, and I'm sure you hear this all the time, my accountant's no good. Well, I only see my accountant once a year. It's always the accountant's fault, rather than looking back at yourself and asking the honest questions. Have you actually ever put your hand up and said, okay, this is what I project I'm going to bring in the next 12 months. Do we need to do some planning now for it, etc.? Katrina, do you have some specific things that you feel like clients should be taking to their meetings with their accountants when they're business owners, in terms of then the accountant being able to get the information that they're giving them right?
Oh, absolutely. So that they have to have their figures balanced or in an order that they can run reports. Like we said before, garbage in, garbage out. If it's not balanced, if it's not working, if it's not in the right place, if it's not lodged, the meeting's pretty pointless. Every accountant will vary what they want, and they might want to look at things beforehand. The beauty of the software generally is they can log in and have a look. So it's generally me, and I always bring it back to what I do. I make sure everything's right. I've followed all my rules that I've been told, and everything looks like it's in the right place. Then I shoot them an email and say, hey, I want to come in and chat about, try and give them a few things, no surprises, what I want to talk about, but at least then give them some time to look at those numbers and figure out and apply what they think you want to do, because they apply a whole pile of tax law. So just because you get told by someone down the pub that such and such is a good way to go, it could be your situation is a little different, and your accountant will know that perhaps under your structure, those rules don't apply. But you can ask that question. They should be able to go, that's a great point, except in your case, that doesn't work for you, and here's the reasons. And that's really, like, recently a lot of people have been saying they're having to pay tax and they're not sure why. And a lot of the accountants have jumped on those TikTok groups and explained why. And it's a bit hard when they don't know the situation. But I think it's a matter of, if you're not getting the meeting that talks about things before they happen, then you probably need to have a chat to your accountant about what you engage them for. Are you just doing compliance, looking in the rearview mirror? Is that good enough? For me, for my mind, I'd never say that's good enough. You're running a business, you want to be able to go, what's happening in the future? But that's, you're not going to be able to predict the future, but you can actually at least have current data. There's nothing worse than also going to the meeting and the stuff you're looking at is 2.5 years old. And you go, really, that's not helpful at all. So current data, giving them time, working with their guidelines. They're brilliant people, but they need, we're usually quite introverted, and we like to have a whole conversation with ourselves and then present to the client. And so most of us don't deal well with surprises. So giving them an agenda, tell them your questions. So
that's a fantastic tip, one I haven't thought of myself, actually. Katrina, how do we choose the right bookkeeper for us?
Look, certainly I would say, being totally honest, there's people that I've worked with that we're not a good fit. It might be a personality thing. It might be they don't like how I deliver the checklist or how I ask for the things to be done by the deadline. But generally, if I was shopping for a bookkeeper, I would go and have a look at my software and they usually have a band of bookkeepers on their sites that they have studied their software. So that's good if they know the software. Nothing worse than a bookkeeper taking a job and they don't know your software, because there'll be things that they can't fix or don't know how to do. I'd probably, I'd want to know, I'm a very big advocate of fixed fee. I don't think you should pay hourly. I think you're paying for a result. And I think that if a bookkeeper's not willing to give you a fixed fee without giving them some information or allowing them time to discover how long things are going to take, they should be able to fix the fee and give you that surety of what you're budgeting for. And I think it's all about commitment. What are you going to do? What are they going to do? And by what time? Like, are you responsible for the data entry? When do you have to have that done? What are they going to do? And it comes down to a little bit of personality as well. I mean, nearly all bookkeepers will have those requisite skills. They've ticked off the learning, but it's just down to interviewing them, chatting to them. Usually getting a recommendation from someone who's worked with someone is good. That always works quite well. But a lot of it is personality and just, these are my boundaries, these are my deadlines, and these are what you need. I'll commit to you, you commit to me. I think if you can get that out of someone, you're doing well.
You're speaking my language. I love it. Okay, I've got a curly question for you. Do you have a particular software that you prefer?
Oh, it's going to be Xero, of course. Look, I grew my business on MYOB. I was a consultant for many years, Purple to the core. But times changed, software changed.
Mm-hmm.
Xero sort of came into the market. I will say I didn't jump on board straight away.
Yeah.
I was sitting on the outside going, till they've got payroll integrated, I'm not looking at it. Wow, damn me, they integrated payroll. So I kind of had to do it. And I do remember sitting in my car ringing my 2IC saying, that's it, we're going to Xero. And she's like, do you know how to use it? I said, not a clue. She went, oh, well, that's typical you. Just jump in, work it out. But I would say Xero because we do work with some MYOB mainly as conversion. So we know how to use it, but it's just not my preference. I find Xero has a lot of ability to connect with things, and we don't have those restrictions with some of the other software. They've gotten better, but I just find they do integrate. Having said that, it's not the bee's knees. You can outgrow it. You can outgrow the payroll. You can outgrow the job costing for sure. But the things that hook into it seem to do it really well. And the other software, it's all on a par now these days for money. So it's not like you're getting a better deal with anyone in particular. For me, if it's online and if it's progressive and updating and compliant, you're winning. QuickBooks Online we use a little bit of, but I must admit it's not our preference. We definitely would promote and prefer Xero.
Yeah, okay. You've got my heart all over the place.
Sorry, I could go on about Xero all day, but I won't.
I'm only a recent convert to Xero, probably in the last 12 months, and I just find its usability is so simple. Yeah. It's very direct. There's little to no jargon. I know what I'm doing. It's easy to navigate. Whereas MYOB over the years, we used that for many, many years. Oh, look, I loved it at the time, but it wasn't until I tried something different that I realized, no, this is my wheelhouse. I like this.
You should see the aha moment when we convert someone from MYOB to Xero, when we explain, you don't need to remember those codes, those numbers, forget that. You don't need to know that. And they're like, what now? And when you start this, you don't have to restart it all again if it doesn't work. You just go straight over here. But look, I think there is downsides to Xero, don't get me wrong. No, nothing's perfect. It gives them an ability to improve. But for us as a practice, I've got staff. For us, being able to concentrate on one software really makes it a lot easier for us. We only have to learn one thing and keep up with one thing. But and there's some clients, I certainly wouldn't recommend Xero to someone it didn't suit. And if they came to me and this has happened and they say, I'm on MYOB and I love it, I'm like, cool, what are you talking to me for? What do you want from me? And they go, oh yeah, but I don't really like this, or it doesn't do that, or I've got a piece of software it won't connect to. And I'm like, well, they're good reasons to change, but don't just change because everybody else is.
No.
Like if you love it and it is a great product, then stick with it.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I won't be doing your work because I don't want to specialize in it. It's just my preference.
Yeah, absolutely. Katrina, tell us about your business, what you offer, about your team and its growth.
Yeah, so we started out, it was obviously just me, pushing the leg of the crib while the baby was under the desk, and then it evolved. Now that's usually a dog that's under the desk, or many dogs, as you've probably heard before. And the kids have grown through all that. But I did take on staff, and I'm really blessed. I've got some fabulous people I work with, and they're really loyal and great. And we love what we do, which is, it's a little sad we have in jokes and stuff, but that's what numbers nerds do. But I've sort of expanded that and contracted that and expanded that. And I think I'm at a point where I've got the right team. Mm-hmm. But it's not for everybody. A lot of bookkeepers will work on their own. And harping back to what you asked about before about finding a bookkeeper, you don't have to get a bookkeeper that has staff, but you do need to consider, if you do have a single bookkeeper, that they have capacity and that they don't take you on and then they are ill or away and can't service you. I'm lucky. I work in, I'm from the Geelong sort of Surf Coast area. I have a network of bookkeepers, and recently a client came to me and I just wasn't in a position to take them on. It was just a bit of a bad time for us. We were busy. So I just straight away was able to hand them to a perfect bookkeeper who does exactly what I do and pretty much say, hey, I can't help you this week, maybe next week, but not this week, but she can. And I think if you can find those people, that's all you want. You just want the same result.
Love it. All right, Katrina, I would like to know, final question from me today. What's the one thing you think that we as business owners need to know about our bookkeeping that we often don't?
It sounds really too broad to say, is it correct? But I think if I turned to a business owner and said, so are you making money? They'll go, oh, I don't know, there's money in the bank. Oh, well, I know people don't owe me too much. You go, yeah, but are you making money? And then you did dive in deeper, and that, are you making money? brings out am I earning what I need to earn for the hours I put in? Or it's bringing out, am I earning a great amount of money, but now I'm going to pay a whole pile in tax because I didn't structure correctly, or I wasn't able to share that income amongst my wife who's at home not earning an income, example, because we've got kids. So I think that, are we making money? I mean, tradies are brilliant people and they're really well supported, and tradie wives are pretty passionate, as I've discovered from reading some of the group. Very passionate people. Do you want to get up in the morning and, you need to get out of bed and go, am I making money? Because really, money isn't everything, but it drives a lot of the other things we can do, things we can offer for our kids and our own lifestyle choices. So I think knowing that you can use your numbers to figure out, is this business giving me what I deserve?
Yeah.
And if it's not, maybe you need to make a pivot.
Yeah, time to change. There's always scope to change. We're not stuck and fixed like statues. There's an opportunity for us to change at any time. Sometimes we don't know how to change, and that's where experts like yourself come in and can point us in the right direction. And sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And again, that's where we've got, there's so many professionals out there that can help you in your business journey. You are not alone. And you don't need to know what you don't need to know. There's somebody else out there that can help you find it and educate you around it.
And you don't have to love it. You don't have to love doing numbers. There's always people to support that. But I think if you can be invested in it, that's a good start.
Yeah, it's very important. You need to know what the things, there are some critical bits of information that you must know and be invested in, that's for sure. Katrina, where can our listeners find you if they'd like to find out more about what you do?
Yeah, so we have a website, www.krscg.com.au. I get on there sometimes and write some blogs. They can email me, info@krscg.com.au. Pretty much, if you're looking to deal with a bookkeeper, I'm going to ask you those questions about what you're doing now and why. Just because, like you said at the beginning, you don't always just outsource things for the sake of, I don't want to do it. Sometimes you just need a bit of a comrade in arms for a short period to get you back on track. So yeah, they can certainly reach out that way. And then I usually do a call to discuss with them first. I always like to, if we can't meet in person, at least we need to speak on the phone. Then maybe there might be an online meeting or a real meeting. It just depends on what they want to do.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed our chat.
No, that's okay. No worries. You're very welcome.